Hey, welcome to another video. This episode I'll be taking you through the painting process of a landscape environment. We'll start with the initial sketch and move towards a more finished and polished look, so stay tuned till the end to see how the final image turned out. My name is Victor, I'm a concept artist working in the video game industry, and I'm really excited to talk about this painting. So let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing I would recommend you guys do is gather up a bunch of reference images. This will really help you get a more realistic result in the end, right? You'll have lots of references about materials, about light, and how it interacts with all those elements. Once I'm okay with my subject matter, I move on and create a very simple line work sketch. It doesn't have to be complicated at all. This one literally took like 5 or 8 minutes or so, and I did just a couple of things: establish the horizon line, establish the main planes of the image, and also I roughly placed the main elements I have and kind of figure out how I roughly want them to look like. Where do you go from here? Once you have the sketch ready and you're okay with it, me personally, I like to work on the sky. First of all, because it's not a very complicated subject matter to tackle, and secondly, because it also gives you an opportunity to establish the mood for the whole image. Once you make a decision on the color and the value of the sky, you already have a good idea of where you want this image to go in terms of, atmosphere, mood, and so on. I wanted to have an overcast type of lighting with just a little bit of sun hitting the top of the castle and maybe that hill as well. And now it's time to work on the values. So what I do is block in my main planes, so the background, the middle ground, and the foreground, with a flat color. And what I'm trying to have here is a graphic look to the overall image and sort of have a good read on the composition overall. I'm not thinking too much about color, although I already assigned the tone and the color that I think might work eventually. I'm still tending to the composition by adding a bridge that would help connect the middle ground with the background, and it also helped the viewer's eyes to travel through our image. In retrospect, I think I should have thought of how to connect the middle ground to the foreground, but for now it looks okay. So I'm also adding some fog to place the hill with the castle in the scene. And in general, it's a good idea to have some sort of connection between your main planes so they don't just look like some simple cutouts. I placed a very simple silhouette of a character in the foreground. Now, this is not a character-driven image, that's why I'm not gonna pay too much attention to it, but overall I use them for scale and sometimes for story purposes. I'm also trying to improve the composition by placing some vegetation in the foreground. By the way, for those of you who are interested in the brushes, there is a free link in the description with some of my most used brushes. They work for Photoshop and also for Procreate, so feel free to grab them from there, experiment, and let me know what you guys think. Also, don't forget to check out other videos on the channel. There are plenty of tutorials and different environments available. Alright, let's move on to the next step. And that would be working on the forms and finally adding that sunlight that I was talking about in the beginning to the castle. I did that just by dialing in the adjustment in Photoshop and specifically hue and saturation adjustments. So it wasn't really hard because I'm working with reference, and if you guys also work with reference images, it should be pretty easy for you to find the result you're looking for because you already have a starting point and a reference point. So from now on, a lot of the process is going into establishing a good balance of softer edges and sharper edges, and I think I wanted to have a contrast between the castle and the hill, castle having lots of sharp turns and the hill being smoother overall. I'm trying to complete the environment around the castle by adding some details, some buildings, or maybe just indicating that, because I don't really want to spend a lot of time on those elements in particular. And overall, from this point, I'm going to jump onto foreground and going back and forth between the main planes because I don't want to be stuck in one place, and I really want to kind of try to achieve a balanced image overall. So I'm just putting some details onto the vegetations in the foreground. I'm also adjusting the values for our foreground plane and trying to get it to be a bit more readable. I'm spending some time on the clouds in the background, and I'm also adjusting a little bit the waterfalls on the left, trying to make them look a little bit more consistent. And as I mentioned before, I'm not stuck in one place, constantly jumping from plane to plane, just to make sure that there is a nice balance of details in the image overall. Now I'm worried about the castle, that it's not, contrasty enough, so I decided to add some sort of gradient that would make the light on top be stronger and it kind of fades away on the bottom, and this in return will give us some color variation as well as a little bit of more interest for our focal point overall. It's also a good idea to check the proportions that the shape is created. Adjusting it a little bit and maybe cleaning up the area as a whole helps to, get a cleaner, more readable look to your image. I wanted to have some sort of framing device, so I duplicated the trees on the left, I enlarged them and painted a little bit over and moved them to the right upper side. I think this will help us in return keep the viewer's eyes towards our focal point and also maybe introduce a little bit of dynamic lines as well as enhance the image with added depth. I'm still trying to improve the values in certain areas. For example, I'm pushing the darks a bit more in that lower part of the hill, and I'm also trying to enrich the environment with additional details like maybe some changing planes, like adding some roads, and overall trying to look for areas that are left unattended so far. I thought it might be cool to add maybe a man-made passage or a wall that kind of goes around the whole hill and maybe indicate that it's leading to some sort of secret area. Maybe there are like catacombs underneath this castle or something of that sort. I think it kind of enriches the environment and helps add a little bit more visual interest to the whole composition. Right now I'm mostly spending time on adding accents of light here and there, maybe like improving the contrast overall, especially around our focal point. I'm also trying to find like some rough edges that maybe indicate weird still working on adjusting the values, adding smaller shapes, trying to get a balance between the big, medium and small shapes. Some color variation as well wouldn't hurt. And again, just as I spent like 5 minutes on the castle or on our focal point, I'm kind of leaving that area, moving on to our foreground or maybe background, and glazing on top of those. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing, it helps a lot. Also, don't forget to ask any questions you have about the process in the comments. I'm trying to answer all of them. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you soon in the next video.